Talia and I'd like to welcome you on behalf of the Chamber to Good Morning Healdsburg. This morning, we are lucky to have with us Lorez Bailey. Good morning, Lorez, who is the publisher for North Bay Business Journal. If you haven't seen that, you should. It's a wonderful publication. And she has been a chief executive officer for over 15 years, providing thoughtful, strategic, and operational leadership in industry. And we are really very fortunate to have you with us, Lorez. Welcome to the meeting.
Thank you so much for having me. Should I go ahead and get started?
Yep, I'd say let's.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you so much to Talia for having me, and thank you to Mary Henderson and Jessica for taking care of me and making sure I had everything today and for including me. I have been the publisher of the North Bay Business Journal about 6 months now. So I think I still get to claim a little rookie status, I think they say you have until a year to claim all the time. Like, I'm new. But with that said, let me go ahead and share my screen. I'm not a deep PowerPoint presentation person, but my background in education tells me there's different types of learning styles. Some people like a PowerPoint, some people need some data. So with that in recognition, I will share a little bit, but I will not read these slides. I'll just kind of talk as we go. So North Bay Business Journal, we are excited that the North Bay Business Journal has been telling the news of the North Bay for 35 years. We're celebrating our 35th anniversary this year. And the North Bay Business Journal really is a business to business. It's a business publication. No one else in the North Bay is covering business news like we do. We fall under, the North Bay Business Journal falls under the Sonoma Media Investments family. So of course, I'm sure you're aware of the Press Democrat, but part of that family is quite a few publications, the Sonoma County Gazette, La Prensa, which is our Spanish language publication, Sonoma Index Tribune, Argus Courier, and Petaluma. So I just share that to say that we're in very good company, being able to leverage the resources and everything that comes with being part of the Sonoma Media Investments family. So as I said, the North Bay Business Journal has been around for 35 years, covering the news of Napa, Sonoma, Marin, and Solano. And what I always say, what makes the North Bay Business Journal in particular special is three things. First is the news of what's happening in the North Bay. I think it's also, I always say it's also a retention. If you know in the business community what is happening, what else is happening in other industries and sectors, it really helps you want to further invest in our North Bay, but also just a keen awareness of what's happening. I think very often we do get very focused in the wine industry, but there's a lot of sectors and industry happening in the North Bay, and we're glad to be able to share that news. So the news of what's happening in the business world. And then secondly, networking. We're very much known for our events, but I think the reason why we're known for our events is that networking, the opportunity to come together with other like-minded businesses, learn. I always say, back in the days when I had a fundraising, I can talk about my background a little bit later, but when I was in fundraising, and I always say, yeah, I kind of don't go for the chicken. If I don't make a good connection when I leave an event or have a couple of business cards, was it a good use of my time? So I think that's another one of our strengths of giving people opportunities to come together. And then thirdly, celebrating. We celebrate the successes, we celebrate the good work, we celebrate people in the business community and leaders who are making a difference either in the business world or philanthropy or community service. So the news, networking, and celebrating, I think, are the three pillars of the North Bay Business Journal. For my data-driven people, because there's always somebody in a crowd who likes some data, right? This is who we reach. This is the reach of the North Bay Business Journal. And that's print and digital. And, everyone knows that we are not seeing people read newspapers as much as they used to. But where the growth is in the digital world and in the online world. And little by little, but more and more, we're seeing more and more of that being embraced and where we're going. I thought I would share this back to, just interesting news of what are people interested in the North Bay. So we recently did a survey And these are sectors and areas that people across the North Bay businesses told us that they were interested in. And I think, as you know, a chamber and also people that I'm sure work in business or own businesses, it might be interesting to know where the community at large is looking to know what's going on. Wine industry, of course, right? That's without being said. But we have a very strong real estate and commercial real estate going on in the North Bay. That's interesting. So I just wanted to share that slide as just a, hey, this is what our people in the North Bay have said that they're interested in. This is covering all the 4 counties that I'm talking about. And then back to celebrating, to just sharing that this is the amount of events that we have every year, but these events are varied. They're educational, they're celebrating as things, we're talking about diversity and inclusion, we're celebrating influential women, Pride, Latino, but they're also learning events. And I just say that to say that when I say, the North Bay Business Journal has events, we have 16 events a year plus. I'm going to stop sharing because, as I said, I'm not a super PowerPoint person. And I think, be engaging, and no one wants that person that reads their PowerPoint. One of the things that I also want to say about what I love about being at the North Bay Business Journal, I come from a little bit about my background. I'm coming full circle. Mark, you were saying you read a little bit. I was a person who started out in a program in high school because people told me I wasn't going to go to college. Went to a Catholic school and really got involved in a program that supports youth and got me working in radio and media and was a lifesaver and a game changer for me and did a lot of media work. And when the economy got bad, I said, okay, what do I want to be when I grow up? And I realized like all my community service and everything I did was serving youth. So I took a different trajectory and started working with youth and at Social Advocates for Youth and CHOPS Teen Club. And then, at the time of this shelter in place, everyone started reevaluating what they wanted to do. And I wanted to go back to my passion of that. But why that's all important is because when you're raising money or doing this, these all are things that are transferable into business, and running a nonprofit is running a business. Very often people don't realize that, but it is really running a business. So part of the charge now that I'm at the Journal in my 6 months, still claiming my rookie hat is to really make sure that the North Bay Business Journal is talking about news across the North Bay. If you're familiar with the North Bay Business Journal, we have a reputation sometimes of being a little Santa Rosa centric or Sonoma County centric. Our events were held at one venue in Santa Rosa, all prior to me coming, 24 events. Were held at one venue, and we have really said we want to honor the fact that the North Bay is so varied. It is so different. We have a lot of likenesses, but different, and we need to be able to share all the great venues and things that exist across the North Bay. So if you have attended our events in the past, you will find that this year 40 Under 40 is going to be at the Barlow. Influential Women will be held in Petaluma. We're going to be holding events in Napa and Marin. So we're really trying hard to get into the communities that we say that we report on and serve. Additionally, when I came into this role, they said, we want to look at diversity. Yes, there is cultural diversity, but business size diversity. We felt like we kind of had a focus on certain financial institutions or larger businesses, but what about our smaller to medium businesses? So partially why I'm here today is to be able to be a bridge and a liaison to what's happening in our micro communities. And we all know in the North Bay, we have micro communities within micro communities within communities, and they're all special and they want to see themselves represented. So that's the spirit in which we're moving forward in the North Bay Business Journal. We want to make sure that we're covering the news that is important to business across the North Bay and being able to be this relationship. So another thing that, three things that kind of my high level topics that I'm going to be talking about today is the North Bay Business Journal, which you've kind of got that overview. But also what trends are we seeing in business, and then a little bit about diversity and leadership. I just want to say that it's kind of a mixed bag what I'm hearing and seeing across the North Bay. Next week, we're going to be holding our economic outlook at Sonoma State, and we're going to have Dr. Eiler, Mike McGuire, And then I'm having Mike Blakely, economist from Marin. We're going to have the Yountville Chamber represented because they've created a new collaborative across Napa where all the chambers are coming together, including the Hispanic Chamber, and they're creating a coalition as well as their individual work, but a coalition, and we're going to talk about that. So I think you might find that interesting. And Letitia Hankey, who runs a woman who runs a construction business, but has really gotten into workforce development. And then we're going to have Eric Pearson talking about cannabis, because we thought, a lot of us, or at least I thought, the money was flowing in cannabis, and I had a good real conversation with him about cannabis. But I say all that to say that when we're talking about trends, it's two sides. So the economic outlook is going to pretty much say, hey, things are really good in the North Bay compared to the United States and other parts of California, even compared to Silicon Valley, who I hear is a lot of people's like, ultimate, if we could be Silicon Valley, not really us being, but a lot of the things that they've done in terms of innovation. But what I'm hearing is the North Bay is ahead of the game, and we're actually doing very, very well in comparison. But on that same token, when we're talking about the smaller businesses, the businesses that are, run very often by women, or, their entrepreneurial spirit, we're hearing there are still challenges there. So as much as we're going to have more of a bright economic outlook picture for that, I'm talking to small business, development group and different. They're like, yeah, well, that bright outlook doesn't feel so bright in some of the people that we're working with and the businesses. I talked to Marin Small Business, and I think over the last 2 years, they've helped 1,800 small businesses navigate these last couple of years through this pandemic. So I think it's a mixed bag in terms of what it's looking like, but there's a lot of hope on the horizon. Some of the challenges, I think, are the challenges everyone is still facing: workforce development, how to get employees and how to retain them. Because you can recruit them, but if they leave in 3 months, if they leave in 6 months, so it's not just recruiting employees and staff, but how we're going to retain them. And so we're hearing a lot of culture shift and thinking about ways to make my business attractive, even if I can't pay the highest price, but what can I do that my employees say, you know what, maybe I'm not making the most money, but I love where I work. I love the people I work for. And I often say people don't necessarily work for business, they work for people. And then I think the other high trending thing is around diversity and inclusion. And it looks different everywhere you go. I'm proud to say that in my short time at Sonoma Media Investments, it's been a deep commitment. It's not just a one-off or let's have a retreat. Every single month, the entire staff is required to participate in diversity and inclusion training. And then we're doing a separate one for management. So that's a lot of investment of time and money. And so I've heard a lot of different, but I can say it is a very, very important thing. Now, as a woman of color and as a Black woman, I just recently did a project with the city of Santa Rosa where they interviewed me. And one of the things I said is I was at a crossroads where I was going to leave the county. I was going to leave the North Bay because of the challenges, the microaggression, the amount of discrimination and racism that I do face on a regular basis. And my friends and people know about it. I mean, I'm going to literally say someone came in the building the other day and go up in the elevator and turned to me and asked me, where was I going in the building and who was I? And I'm like, you're in my building asking me who I am to quantify who I am. So those kinds of things. And so what I say to everyone, on this movement of how can we create spaces that are diverse, more diverse and inclusionary, I'm going to go back to what is your culture in your business. You can recruit me, but if I don't feel I can even handle I would say a couple of things. One, people need to be prepared where they're coming. If they're moving here from out of the area, they need to be understanding the demographics, where they're working, what that community looks like. Is there a community for them? But more importantly, people will thrive even in a difficult environment if they love their jobs, if they love where they work, they love how they're treated, they love that they feel like it's an inclusionary space to a lot of different things. And inclusion is not just race, right? It's about gender, it's about sexual orientation, it's about, can you deal with a learning disability or someone who works in a different style, but can we make accommodations? There's a lot to be thought about in inclusionary, But what I would say about that is, as everyone says, well, you know, hey, I posted my job in Vallejo, I posted my job in Oakland, I'm trying. It's really about being intentional of making sure you're making connections with your community and different businesses prior, so that when it is time, a lot of times I'm getting people by picking up a phone or reaching out, or because the reputation of where the leadership precedes the organization. So people want to be there. And this new generation, I'll just add this last thing and then I'll open. I think you want to, if you want to ask any questions. I just want to say also, I'm connected to Sonoma State for many reasons. I have a daughter who's in school there. I have a husband that's an academic advisor. And it's very interesting what we're also hearing about the new graduates is they are very mission focused. It's not just enough for them to know we process water, we make clean water so you can have drinking water. You would think that would be like a mission enough, right? To understand that we provide clean water. But what we're hearing is they want to understand the deeper impact. Like, why is it important to have clean water? You know, how do we go about clean water? What is that mission about clean water? How do we make a difference in the community? And so we're hearing a lot of young people also coming out of college, not so much as income focused, but mission focused. Do I feel like the company I'm working for invest in philanthropy? Do they give us time to volunteer in the community? Are they invested in other things that are going to make a difference in the world, not just selling widgets? So I just say that because that's another trend. And I often hear people say, hey, can you tell Sonoma State students that, you know, they're not going to come out and be a top manager, make a lot of money. And yes, but what they are becoming more and more focused on is mission focused. And so I'll just kind of wrap up there just in case there's any questions, to be sensitive to time. I know I threw out a lot in a short amount of time. So if there's any questions or feedback for me, I don't know. I also have a counterpart, I think that might be joining us, is Nate Lee, who his territory and area that he does serve is the Healdsburg area. So I also had him here just in case if there's any further connections. And Talia, I will go. And did I do my thank you? Did I thank you, Talia? Did I do start that?
You are so,
thank you. Okay.
yeah, you did your thing. You're great. I just wanted to thank you for being on and being honest and refreshing and really sort of taking, you know, it's hard to do a culture shift, as we discussed when we spoke together. We both had some similar backgrounds, and I really appreciate you trying to diversify the paper in multiple ways and taking things to other places and doing different things and just your energy. So one thing that I wanted to ask is, we know the industry itself is somewhat seen as still kind of an old school type of, you know, like you said, some people still read the paper, and there's definitely a demographic for that. But is there anything that you see, like, do you see printed paper still being printed in 5 years from now?
Yeah, it's a good question. For what we're saying right now, I'll just speak for the Press Democrat, because that's probably, you know, more broader. The Press Democrat is probably still one of the highest read newspapers across the United States. It really drives the highest readership. Right now, Press Democrat is drawing people from all across the country, amazing people, but because they are seeing papers being shuttered or being bought by hedge funds, or I'm going to say also a lot of papers have been purchased recently for political advancement, right? I'm going to buy a newspaper, invest in a paper so that I can now push out political messaging the way I want. So moving away from that true transparency around journalism. What I say is, we do think that the readership in print is slowly going to more start to just be less, right? My kids don't pick up a paper at all, but they can be on a laptop, an iPad, a phone, and digest all their news at the same time. So we do see that. And I even have like advertisers coming in now and saying, like, I don't want any print advertising. I want all digital. I want all web-based type of things. I want to send out newsletters. I want to do geo tracking. I want more analytics. I want more data around who's reading it, who's seeing it, who's clicking it. And with print, you just can't pull out those same data and analytics that people are really wanting. So I think for now, we're still printing, but we know that gradually we're going to increase on the digital side and probably decrease on the printed side. But then when COVID happened, we saw readership just explode because people really wanted the information, and we are retaining those readers.
All right, anybody else have questions? Jeff?
Hi, thank you. Sorry, I was looking for the button.
Hi.
Thank you for the presentation. I'm curious if you have an assessment in your first few months with the Business Journal of how we, as a community up here in Healdsburg, are doing in terms of getting information to you and getting as much coverage as we can, ideally positive coverage.
Well, I'll
And if
tell
there's
you.
anything we can do to be better.
Yes, I was going to say, I can tell you what will help. So when I have conversations or meetings, and I love having one-on-one meetings with businesses. So if you ever feel like, Lorez, I just like to have a meeting and talk to you. I just use widgets as the safest thing. I'd like to talk to you about widgets. I love to just have meetings and talk to businesses and learn, so that when I make presentations like this, I can say, well, this is what I hear what's going on in Healdsburg, because I'm going to tell you, that's what people want mostly from me, is what's going on in other areas. So what I love to say is that I love to pass you off the sources. So I would love to say, like, I'll say to Anthony, okay, I met with the chamber and I've met with Talia. I'm going to give you her name, because when you ever have questions about Healdsburg, you want to know about a particular thing. So I think making sure that you send us things, send us press releases, send us an email saying to Anthony Borders, who is our editor and content manager, first of all, you can always share anything. Doesn't mean we're going to cover it, but if something's happening, an event, oh, do you know about this? Hey, someone's used to sell corks and now they're selling bamboo. We want to know about it. Secondly, we also accept contributions. So for example, let's say Talia said, I want to just do a really great story or something on everything that I feel like is happening in business in Healdsburg. She could reach out to Anthony, and Anthony would say, well, these are the parameters, this is what it looks like, but we also do accept submittals. And then, like I said, also having these meetings, I would love to continue to have them, because then when I learn about things, I'm able to say, when, you know, the writers have their writers meeting, they're like, gosh, we're trying to do something and about this. And I can say, well, you're talking about, I'm going to make something up, Petaluma. I actually know someone in Healdsburg. I think that would be really good to use as call and ask them about what's going on with widgets and what they're seeing with widgets in Healdsburg. So I think it can be a reciprocal kind of thing where you can definitely reach out, but always let us know what's going on, because you are our boots to the ground.
Great. All right. Evelyn, our city council person.
Yes, good morning. And yes, thank you for that presentation. I appreciate it. The North Bay Business Journal is something I've read a lot, and I think it's a really great magazine or publication to help us understand what's going on within the greater North Bay. I love that. My question is based on, you talked about the youth getting out of college and what's motivating them work-wise. So this is not my city council hat, this is my business hat. I have a client that is small, and we've been trying to hire young people. We want to get a little more diversity within our workforce, and we've had very little success. I mean, we've hired people, but they haven't succeeded. And I think it's partly from what you were describing. They're you know, mission based more than, and they also want to be the boss. They think they should start out at the top. So do you have any recommendations on how we could kind of try to bridge that gap? Because I think that we want to try to utilize our youth in our businesses, but it's
what
been
kind
really
of, can I ask what kind of businesses, or just what it does?
It's a cosmetic surgery practice.
Okay, so what are young people all worried about? Influencers, being influencers. You know, they're worried about their appearance. We are seeing young people at a time like never before taking advantage of services, maybe appropriately or inappropriately, but, you know, taking advantage of it. And it's so interesting because my daughter, who's in the wine business, someone asked her the same question, like how to attract, you know, that. So what I would say is, one thing, if you look at your high school, they probably have a career technical education pathway. So I would look first to see if there's some connector there, right? If you may not have a health pathway, but something where you could connect with the programs. because the nice thing about also your career technical education programs, they also work on the soft skills, not just hard skills, but they work on the soft skills. And probably a lot what you're dealing with is that soft skill attainment, right? I know jokingly, you know, we used to say at CHOPS Teen Club, like they don't know how to answer phones. We had to write a script to tell, you know, our new students how to answer phones. They couldn't use a copier. They, you know, if I had one more time when someone just walked away from a copier jam and said, I can't. And I say, oh no, you can and you have to, right? So how do we develop those problem solving skills? So what's happening is we have a lot of young people who are educated, but do they really have the work skills and those skills? So what I would say is, one, you have to understand that when you bring in a young person, you have to understand that you're gonna have to do some development, a professional development. They're not gonna come fully formed, ready to go and seasoned. So you have to be knowing that when you wanna bring in a younger person, are you gonna be willing to invest in their development and be okay of them not being the complete package? But you also, that's back to that retention. Maybe, you know, I used to say at CHOPS very often, I can't pay but minimum wage, but do I make sure you get to go to conferences? Do I make sure that I bring in speakers? Do I make sure anytime there was a free workshop, do I make sure that I give you these other opportunities to learn and build so that you feel invested? So I just say that young people are coming not with the skills ready to very often work. And so you have to know that and be willing to invest in it. And then I think doing a good job finding out what motivates them and then trying to figure out how to craft that workspace. But recruiting right now is just so hard. Like I wish I could say I had a magic secret. It's multi-pronged. It's everything. It's from, you know, using those Sonoma State, I can't think of what they use at Sonoma State, Handshake. Using Handshake, I mean, Indeed, Craigslist. And then this is my last thing. Do not write your job description so boring. Don't write them like we are used to, right? You can't write, you know, blah, 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 must be able to type. You've got to be able to say, you know, like interested in, you know, helping people see the beauty in themselves. And, you know, you've got to like find interesting ways because they're not motivated by, they're going to learn work skills.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else out there? I know we're getting down to the end here, but we do. That's open. Not seeing any. Lorez, I want to thank you again. You know what, for me, it's really nice just to be able to put a face on the publication. I mean, I've been a reader for a long time. In fact, I can see I do get one of those written copies still.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can see it over there on our reception table. And to be able to put a face on it, for having someone come out and indicate an interest and being able to make that contact like you were talking about, I think is wonderful. And it puts a new face on the publication for me, for sure.
And thank you, and Talia and Jessica, you can always send out my contact information. If anyone would like to follow up with the email, like I say, just a meet and greet or a virtual meeting like this, I'm always happy to meet and learn about even greater what's going on in Healdsburg.
All right, well, thank you again.
Thank you, Lorez. It's so great to have you, and you're welcome to stay on if you'd like to hear our city.
Yeah, I will. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. All right, next up, we have the city and council. I assume that is you, Evelyn.
Looks like it so far today, right? So I think and I'm sure Jeff can add to what I have to say here, but mostly what the thing that we're really focusing on right now is our goal setting session that's coming up on Monday. So all the council members are busy and have been busy looking, you know, at our strategic plan and what our goals are, where we are, what we've accomplished, what we want to accomplish. So that's really heavy on our minds at this point. In our last meetings, we agreed to start meetings in person on March 21st. Our goal setting will be on Zoom, so that's important to note. But March 21st, we're going to be in the council chambers again, finally, masked, everyone, no matter vaccination status. So we don't want to call out any unvaccinated people as we've been doing. So masked and distanced. So we're going to have a 50% reduction in the number of people can be in the chamber. And we were concerned about how many people would be in the chamber. And David Hagley pointed out that there have been many council meetings where there's maybe 2 people in the back row. So unless we're doing some sort of controversial topic, we don't necessarily get a packed house anyway. So that brought it to kind of a reality check. But we haven't been in the chamber for so long. Maybe we will get more folks who want to participate that way.
Evelyn, will that be a hybrid? You'll be in person, but also offer
Yes.
digital?
Yes. Thanks, Will. Yeah, it's still a hybrid. We're still able to, for both the community as well as council members, can still be on Zoom without having to do all of the prior notifications that they would have when we were under the Brown Act requirements. If we were remote, we had to post it and let people into our homes if they wanted to attend and so on. That is still not required under the exemption that Governor Newsom has going now. So, excuse me, we talked about the Villa Chanticleer, gave direction to staff on where to go for where we want the RFP, all recognizing that it's a community asset that needs to be sure that the community still gets to enjoy, as well as the fact that it needs to probably make some money or nobody's going to want to run it for us. So it's a mix of things that we need to try to accomplish there. We got a budget update. The city of Healdsburg is doing quite well. Things are roaring back in sales tax and TOT. The one department, which isn't surprising, I'm sure, to anyone that's having a problem, is the water department. Our revenues were drastically cut because of reduced usage, and we had an increased cost due to the the free delivery system for as long as we did. So that's going to be a challenge. We're going to have to look into how to backstop our water department. So, I mean, I think that's kind of it from a high level. Our 21st meeting, we're looking at a GMO annual report update, which I think should be interesting. Housing element report and general plan annual update. At least that was what's on the horizon. Those things are always subject to change, but that's what the plan is.
Thank you, Evelyn. Anybody have any questions for Evelyn? Yeah, Skip.
Evelyn and Jeff, I mean, Andrew did a hell of a job walking us through the budget, but it was probably unanimously everyone's top concern was water. And it's a double-edged sword. You get less revenue as you consume less. And every time we talk about drought, it rains. I think last time it was atmospheric river, as Jeff was and team charging for water as we were doing drip systems. But how do we address that? And how does the public get better educated? Because the budget simulator is awesome, but there's not much in it about water. And it seems like that's a pretty tough one.
Do you want to take that, Jeff?
I'll try. Good question, and I think you are touching on something that's important to a lot of people. I'm actually working with our staff this week. I've moved a couple drafts of it on an FAQ on water issues that we're planning to get online hopefully within a week. We have a lot of information out there, but it hasn't been centralized and organized and updated in the way it probably needs to be. To the extent that people are concerned with long-range big projects that diversify our water supply, and I think that's largely what you're asking, and I get it, I am too, that's critically important. We're going to try to do a better job of getting information out about what those projects are and what the timeline is, but the honest answer is we're talking years. We have, for the two big ones are what we call aquifer storage and recovery. This would be aquifer groundwater wells. Which is probably the most impactful, and the other is expanding the recycled water purple pipe system. These are projects in the $8 to $15 million range. We ran some numbers yesterday as we look at our water rates. It just isn't going to work if we try to do it with water rates. So we have funding applications in with both the state and the federal government, FEMA in particular. It takes about a year to hear back from FEMA. That's to hear. We're somewhat optimistic. There's a lot of infrastructure money out there right now. That's just to hear if you get the award. Then you got to do the NEPA environmental review for all federal money. You got to do the engineering work. So I do want to be careful with people that we don't overpromise. We're working very hard to try to secure funding for those things, and we're trying to be very aggressive. But it's going to be a long-term play, and we're going to have to kind of find short-term solutions, which are going to look like conservation.
When you talk about water rights, I know that we get a majority of our water from the Russian River as opposed to Dry Creek, and it's not just as easy as sticking a pipe in Dry Creek, right?
Correct. If you need a water right from the state, and I hesitate to go too far down that road because that's not my area of expertise. But as some of you are aware, I think we've had a request for our water right pending for 20 years. We have met with our state reps recently to try to give that a push and figure out what's going on. There are entities that object out there. Other entities that rely on Dry Creek don't want us tapping into it. And there's always the environmental concern when one more city is tapping into a body of water. What does that mean for the flows and all of those impacts? So there's some real obstacles to doing that, but it is something we're pursuing. It would make a lot of, we have too many eggs in one basket, and that's part of the reason we had such a tough summer last year.
And
Gain much recognition for being kind of a leader on that. All right. Okay, maybe we shift over then. Evelyn, you have anything else you'd like to add?
No, thank you.
Okay, maybe we shift over to Jeff then for update from our city manager.
Sure. Well, you already heard me ramble a little bit about water, so I'll leave that alone, except to say I'll make an announcement that it's raining today. Not a ton, but it was a little wet out there. One of the things we are tracking, just to close the loop on water, is we're trying to get, obviously we can't predict the weather for the next month or so, and we all desperately hope to get some more rain. We are, even without that, we're in a better spot than we were last year, if you can believe it, as bad as the last 2 months have been. And we'll be trying to share that information. So we are cautiously hopeful, let's say, that we're almost certainly going to have some required conservation this year, but we're hopeful. I am hopeful that it won't look like that mandatory 40% virtually cut it in half stuff that we had last year, but rather trying to get everybody to 20% and some restrictions like you have now on irrigation. Do not hold me to that, but I know people need to plan. And so there is some hope that it's a little bit less severe.
Yeah, I have a question for you. The whole water conservation thing for the city of Healdsburg, which was the best in the county, probably maybe in the state, thanks to your leadership there. People get used to it, and then there's a follow-on effect too. My understanding is, of course, the sewer rates are based in part on the water use. So if you drop your water use, especially during those months where we determine what the sewer rate is going to be based on, you're going to end up having less sewer revenue come in April or May or whenever this thing switches over. And I would assume, like Zoom meetings, we get used to them, and some things are going to follow on after the pandemic because they prove to be more efficient in one way or another. And the reduction in water use, at least for some of the people in the city of Healdsburg, may be one of those. Is that something that you are seeing coming down the line, or that we have to anticipate and react to?
Yeah, yes. We're actually planning, this is just as of yesterday, so I haven't had a chance to share this with the council members, but we're probably going to put a presentation on the next regular council meeting, which is March 21st, to start talking about rate impacts and long-term health of these funds. Everybody's known that's been coming for a long time, but we're just kind of looking at the schedule, and we want to give everybody enough time to look at it and provide direction and think about it before we actually have to implement something. And so we're looking at that really carefully. We didn't do any rate increases during COVID. It's a good thing, right? But the cost kept going up. You all know that. So, even without the drought, we still have a need. Our public works director has a prop. We have water lines bust from time to time, as you all also know. He came into my office last week after we had we had a crew out working all night in one spot where we had a water line, and showed me the pipe that they cut out and replaced. And I've still got big old holes in it, and I've still got little chips of rust that I'm trying to get out of the carpet of my office right now because the thing was literally falling apart. So we've got some real needs, even without COVID, without drought, in those funds, and we're going to try to do it in a way that's equitable and not too painful. But we really do need to. We have an old system, and we for a lot of reasons, we have to look at the financial health of those enterprises. Real quick, just one other update, and I'm sure Councilmember Mitchell and I are happy to take questions. I put a link in the chat for a budget simulation that we've released. I hope everybody has seen this. Please, please, please take 10 minutes to weigh in. We've tried really hard to create a tool that doesn't dumb down the budget and yet isn't too overwhelming. That's a hard balance to strike. And I'm sure we'll get better as we do this in future years, and I hope we do versions of the same thing. I was in a meeting last night with Corazon where we were able to walk through that simulation with a handful of residents in Spanish, so we're trying to reach everybody. But all of you have a voice and have opinions, and I would suggest that you get in there and play with that thing for a few minutes. You want to fund something less, go for it. You want to fund something more, go for it. You do have to, before you can hit the submit button, you need to have a balanced budget. So everybody always wants to fund something more and not cut anything. You can't do that. You can raise revenue if you want, but you all understand the pros and cons of that too. But we really, truly, genuinely intend to take the feedback we receive and fold that into the recommended budget that I'll be providing to the City Council later this spring. I promise I'll be looking carefully at what we hear from people, and it's my intent to be able to say, here's some things we heard and here's some things we changed as a result of that. So that only works if people actually take it. So I'm just asking all of you to do me a favor and spend 10 minutes with that, and then tell 2 or 3 of your friends to do the same. And we'll be sharing all of that information coming. I know it's a little bit, you do have to spend 10 minutes, you can't do it in 2, but I think it's worthwhile.
All right. Anything else on updates, Jeff, or that you think we should be aware of for the upcoming month?
Not off the top of my head. Councilmember Mitchell mentioned goal setting on Monday. I think many of you are aware of that. We put out the agenda, which is just at this point a Zoom link, but that's obviously a big deal annually. Council, it's 2 in the afternoon. It's not a regular Monday meeting, so heads up on that. If people want to have a say in what our work plan for the coming fiscal year will look like, that's your chance, either in terms of showing up and saying it, or picking up the phone and talking to your favorite council member and letting them know what you're interested in.
All right. Will?
Jeff, can you talk a little bit more about where the cannabis thing is headed, or what the status of that is right now in the city?
Yes, we did a survey that closed about a week ago. It was supposed to close on a Friday, and I got a call from the Press Democrat at noon that day saying they were going to do a story about the survey. So that was bad timing, and we pushed it out for another few days. We got about 600 responses, and we're kind of sorting through that at this point. But we're folding that, and we're continuing to do some refinement on what a policy would look like. And what I have tentatively right now is May 4th, I think, the first Monday in May. We would come back to the City Council, not with anything to vote on, but sort of a term sheet of an ordinance, if you will, based on what we think we've heard from the council and the community, and trying to whittle down the list of places where we really don't know what the policy looks like. We need more direction, we need more conversation, and try and steer us toward an ordinance after that. So that's the timing at this point. I could, realistically, I think it's going to take, a few months into the summer at best to get something nailed down.
I think we're out of shoot for Juneteenth or whatever we'll go to it.
Okay. So that's sort of the timing at this point, but we have a lot of feedback, and we are working on a presentation that would put the bones of an ordinance in front of the council, so everybody has something to react to.
All right, great. Well, thank you, Jeff. Anybody else have any questions out there for Jeff or Evelyn? If not, maybe we should go over to Talia and see what Talia has to say about the chamber and kind of get an update out there too.
Sure. I do have a question for Jeff. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, okay. I was just curious, if we're forced to do water reduction and then we essentially lose money for that, how can the chamber help put some, education out there about that, some letters to legislators, some things like, is there anything we can do about that? Because that just seems highly unfair when we're doing our part to save on a resource.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously anything you can do to help us, and we did this last year, I think, pretty well. But when it comes time to conserve and helping with messaging, especially to businesses, that's really critical. And so I think we did a good job of that last year, but we're going to need your help again. In terms of legislators, my 2 cents would be there's probably not a ton of good to be done trying to move the federal government.
Mhm.
By all means, feel free to work on our federal representatives and see if they can help. We're making sure that they're aware of our applications with FEMA and also the Bureau of Reclamation, where we're pursuing some funds. Um, the state is probably where we have a little bit more of a chance. I trust that all of you, or many of you, have some connections to our state representatives. Um, and we also have funding in with the State Department of Water Resources. So, maybe we can talk offline about something a little more kind of strategic.
Okay.
But yeah, I think if the community tries to push that a little bit, politely and diplomatically, I don't see why that would hurt, and it might actually help.
Okay, that would be great. We can talk about it at our meeting today.
Good.
I also wanted to just mention that we have sent a survey out to our members. So if you could take it and make sure your employees do, it's to help us bring forward to council and work with them on what's important to the business community for goal setting. It's literally one question. So I hope you'll take that minute to fill that survey out and forward it along. Also, Jessica just put it into the chat. So if you want to take it now, you can, or just copy that link. We have several things coming up, so just keep an eye on the events calendar and the newsletters. We have a lot of, now that people are getting back in person, we are beginning to do our Legends and Leaders again, our annual breakfast, and many other things. So we'll keep you up to date on that, as well as just our committees are continuing to thrive, whether it's government affairs and advocacy, marketing and events, membership. We also are reboosting our young professionals group. So look for those things to be happening, and please encourage your employees to get involved. With that, I want to mention something funny, because I said encourage your the next generation to get involved. Lorez mentioned this earlier, but I think Jessica is going to put it in a file in the link here. But we had an intern, which we're always very happy to have an intern. This is a perfect example. If you'll pull up your chat and look at that file, we asked that intern to mail some things for us. And this is what the person did. And I share this because, Lorez, I can see you cracking up, but as she said, we have to think differently for our workforce. They do not have the same background and work involved. And yes, Skip, it was very creative to do it that way. It didn't have to lick an envelope or anything. But it really told us internally at the chamber, we have to explain more. We have to expose them to different things. They're used to technology, and obviously this person had never mailed an actual letter before.
God.
So get ready for the next generation. I think that proves that we need to have some seminars and things on the evolving workforce and how we're going to work with Gen Z and further out. But I really appreciate everyone attending today. Do we have any more questions in the chat or anything, Jessica, that I missed?
I think what that tells you is you shouldn't be sending snail mail anymore, right? I mean, really.
Right. But some bills you still have to pay that way. So it was very interesting. Or
Yeah.
people don't open, some of our members don't open their invoices, so they still want the snail mail.
See, I think
So,
that intern's challenging you to move that.
yes.
Look at the positive side and learning for you too.
Yes, absolutely.
Mark, if I will, Lorez had mentioned that Nathan might be joining. I see that he's on, so maybe a minute that's left, she could introduce him.
Yes, Nathan Lee. Lorez?
Yes, Nate, can you hear us? Why don't you take a second just to introduce yourself, because you just moved to the area. So I was just telling him that Healdsburg is your service area, but you just recently moved here. So why don't you give a little introduction to yourself and what you've been able to enjoy in the North Bay since you've been here?
Absolutely. And I'm sorry I'm a little bit late getting on. I was actually on the phone with a client already this morning. So it's been an early one. My name's Nate. I've been actually working in this industry for around 10 years now, mostly on the B2C side, but now starting with the B2B with the MBJ. Recently moved here from Colorado, but the Northern California area is absolutely beautiful and I'm not missing the snow whatsoever. And actually I've been spending a lot of time up in Healdsburg and Windsor on the weekends and getting to know the area because it is absolutely beautiful up there. So I look forward to getting to know a lot of you guys, and you'll probably see me out and around and in the area. So
Thank you.
Thank you, Nate. Welcome to the area.
thank you.
Working with you as well. Anybody else have anything that they'd like to bring up before we close out for the day?
I added it into our chat, but we are having our first mixer of the year finally, March 24th at Orsi Family Vineyard. So keep an eye for that link to come out, and we hope to see you all there.
Cool. Well, listen, again, thank you. Thank you, Lorez and Nathan, for attending and bringing us up to date on the journal. That's wonderful. And of course, everybody else for coming and making this event so unique, I think, for, the ability of a town like our size to get everybody together, the city council representative and city manager. And when we also have, of course, Mark Bemig online too. It's a unique opportunity, and I think one that we all appreciate, and really thank you again to the chamber for making this possible. So we'll see you guys next month. Look forward to it. Anything you want to say in closing, Talia?
We appreciate you as you continue to help facilitate this, Mark. So thank you so much. And our next, do you have the date right there, Jessica? I apologize. I don't have my calendar right in front of me. Our next Good Morning Healdsburg.
Yes,
we'll
April
have
7th.
April 7th, and we'll have the new Chief of Police, Matt Jenkins.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody.
So that's
Thank
your
you.
sign off. That's your sign off line, Mark.
Yeah, I'm working on that. Right.
Goodbye, Healdsburg, or good morning.
Yeah.
What are you going to do?
Goodbye, Healdsburg kind of final thing. I'm working on something I think it's going to work. Maybe I'll work with Lorez on this.
Yes.
I'll get an
Rest of
intern.
the energy.
I'll get an intern to come up with one that's actually.
It'd be an acronym.
Yeah, exactly.
And you'll have to text it to us.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
it won't be appropriate. So it'd be a great sign off.
It's challenging, we'll work on it. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Cheers.
you. Have a great morning.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
meeting all of you.
Bye-bye.